We continue to celebrate Chief's 70th anniversary, and today I'm joined by Andrew Winkler, the General Manager of Chief Carriers. Thanks for joining us today, Andrew. I know it's going to be a great conversation. So to kick things off, let's get started with some key milestones or transformation for Chief Carriers that have happened over the last decade.
Well, I think we have to start with back in 1973 is when Chief Industries acquired a truck line. It was an existing truck line at the time, really to make sure they have the capacity to move their products, both the finished and the raw materials, in and out of the manufacturing plant. So that was the first start of the truck line, was 1973.
So talk a little bit about how that has evolved and how the business or the operations even have evolved over those years.
Yeah, so a couple more dates I think were key in the evolution of Chief Carriers. Was 1986, they started a brokerage operation, which from my perspective, that was there weren't very many brokerage operations back then and stuff. So for them to have the foresight to see that and do that and create that, it's really helped Chief, even when the trucks and the fleet weren't in the right position to move the materials. By having a brokerage in place, then we could always hire an outside carrier to come in and move that, and Chief still maintained control of those movements.
And with the trucking line, who are some of the primary customers that you guys service?
Well, obviously we're here to service Chief Industries first. So Chief Buildings, Chief Ag are our two largest customers. They make up approximately 50% of the freight we move in and out of with our trucks.
And a lot of this success has not just come off of the ability to move freight and the success about keeping everything logistically on time, but it's also come from the people. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you guys do and focus on from the people side of things?
Oh my, we've really focused on the people side of our business here the last several years and stuff. I think part of it is we got involved with a program called the Best Fleets to Drive For, and it's really changed our culture from the inside out. And the neat thing about the Best Fleets program is it's a national program. It's actually recognizing the best carriers in the United States and Canada. And they put out a top 20 list every year of those carriers. And keep in mind, there's more than 40,000 truckload carriers out there that would be eligible for this. So when you get to the point you make that top 20 list every year, it's really, really special.
It hasn't just been the people that have helped with the successes. It's also been a bit of the technology and how that's transformed the industry. How have you guys used technology?
Boy, I'd have to start with the trucks. And just like everything else in the business world, the technology moves so fast and it's so hard to keep up with. But in 2020 was the first year that we really started to bring the tech into the trucks. And we're talking about things like the automatic braking systems, the lane departure, that type of stuff. Of course, we have dash cameras in the trucks, so we're always recording, seeing on what's going out in front of us and stuff. So the trucks was the first part of it. AI is a big catchphrase right now, and everybody's looking at how do we use this. It's so crazy. What are we going to do with it in our business? And one of the things we're looking at is an opportunity in dispatch. So when you think about a dispatcher or a load planner and their role on a day-to-day basis, they're essentially matching the load to the driver. They can probably forecast out a day or two ahead of time, but with the use of technology like AI, now we can do weeks at a time, because the algorithms in the AI are running scenarios in the background and saying, hey, if you did this, if you send this truck here, then maybe this would be the backhaul for that truck. And the neat thing about that is, while it's optimizing our business and our movements, it's still keeping that driver in mind. So it knows when that driver has home time scheduled, when that truck needs maintenance scheduled. So it's taking all those things into account.
Well, obviously we know success also comes with challenges.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you've had to overcome?
Well, I think in this industry, the economy itself is always a challenge. And right now, we're just still in the middle of one of the deepest trucking recessions we've seen in a long, long time, and maybe the biggest one ever. The country itself may not have fallen into recession, but one of the things that happened when we came out of COVID is it created a ton of opportunity in trucking. So it was very easy for that driver to go buy a used truck, used trailer, and jump into the trucking business. The problem is, once the freight kind of slowed down, now we have an overcapacity of drivers and trucks in the system. It drives rates down, and that's what put us into that trucking recession.
And the drivers are absolutely, obviously, a key, essential piece of your business. And I know drivers aren't always easy to come by. So what are some of the things that you guys have done to really recruit drivers?
The recruiting's been a key. It's key to our success and our growth and our ability. But like I said, when we focus on people, amazing things happen. So we have an outstanding recruiting department here, and she just does a fantastic job. So from the start of the process, when the applications come in, how she nurtures those, helps the drivers work through the application process. Typically what we see when we get a driver in the door for an orientation class, they are just really in awe of Chief Carriers and what the culture and the environment is like here.
And so thinking about the business, there's always things that people are studying, they're looking forward to, they're learning from other aspects of industries. Who are some of the strategic partnerships, or what are the strategic partnerships outside of Chief that you guys align with to understand what's happening out there?
Yeah, so I can think of two right away. We have the Nebraska Trucking Association, which we've been a member of for a long, long time. And our state association is actually one of the best in the country. They're really forward thinking, and the collaboration and the partnership with them, they run things like the truck driving championships in the summer where you drivers get to participate and show off their skills. They have a fall conference, and they have a really good relationship with the Nebraska State Patrol, which has been fantastic because it's led to even more collaboration with them. For instance, when we put up a new securement facility here in Grand Island a couple years ago, we have this fantastic enclosed facility, and we've been able to host events out here for the State Patrol, for the Nebraska Trucking Association, and work with them in partnership to get some of that stuff out here in central Nebraska as well.
And as I look around here, I see a lot of banners up about best fleets to drive for. Talk a little bit about what that partnership has provided for you.
Yeah, so a lot of pride out here in the shop and stuff. We hang some banners up. So the Best Fleets to Drive For contest is something out there that any carrier with more than 10 trucks can enter a year. And the idea behind the contest is they're trying to recognize the best overall experience for professional drivers in a workplace. So obviously, if you can make that list, you're doing something right.
And so you talk about your people, and I know we continue to talk about drivers because they are such a key aspect to your team. Once those drivers actually get on board, what are some of the other things that you do to build those relationships long term with them?
Yeah, so the driver relationship actually starts with the recruiting process. And it's really interesting because, again, our recruiter does a fantastic job of bringing those in. We get them into orientation for a week here. They sit through a couple days of classroom, then it's 3 days of hands-on training, learning how to tie down the flatbed freight. But it goes so much beyond that because just getting them in the door is just the start. It's now, how are you going to keep these people, and are you able to walk the talk, that recruiter said, are the rest of us going to be able to execute on a day-to-day basis? So we work really hard at that. We talk all the time about that. We have surveys with our drivers. We have very open meetings with our drivers, so a lot of transparency in our organization. Mm-hmm. Tell us what you think. How's it going? A lot of those conversations are happening behind the scenes. Yeah, and then I think probably one of the other key things we do is we've learned to bring their families into the circle. So these drivers have they've got a tough job. They're out there for a week, 2 weeks at a time, and usually that leaves the spouse out there to run the household, almost like a single parent all of a sudden. So if you can bring that spouse and those kids and everybody in, and they can kind of see what mom or dad does in the truck, it makes a big difference.
So you talk about the educational piece. And I know within the last couple of years, you've started lots of educational pieces for people to listen to through your podcast, Driven Too Far.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because I think it's not only educational for your drivers, but you just talked about their spouses and having them understand what they're going through. And a lot of your topics hit on those. So tell me a little bit about how do you get your topics, and what's the benefit in the drivers to listen to that podcast?
So the podcast was a crazy thing we started back in November of 22. So we're almost 2 years in and getting close to 100 episodes out there on the podcast. The first year, I would say, was just me and 30 years of transportation, kind of a brain dump, and all my knowledge kind of spewed out. The one thing I thought that was really missing in the industry was when you get new drivers into the industry, there's no good place for them to go to get information of how trucking works. So that was really what we were after with the podcast. Was we said it's not just about chief drivers, it's about all drivers and how can we help them all. So it's been a fantastic 2 years with the podcast. And like you said, we do topics from anywhere of like How do you choose the right company to go to work for? If you want to be a lease operator, how do you know which company is the best one to go lease your truck onto? We talk about safety and technology and all these different things. So the beauty about the podcast is it's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, so it's out there for the public. And like you just said, the spouses and the families are welcome to learn and listen from those too.
And you just mentioned something that I think is something that's been a fundamental change or helps with the success of chief carriers as well, is that lease operator perspective.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about when that was kind of formed, what that does for your drivers, and why has it been so beneficial for you?
Well, if you've been in trucking for a hot minute, you know that driver shortage has always come up and stuff. And one of the things you have to learn to do is kind of meet people where they're at. So we started to see a pattern in our recruiting calls where drivers were asking, hey, do you guys have a lease purchase program within your company? And we didn't until 2021, and that was when we kind of launched our lease purchase. But what it does is it helps that driver take that next step in their career. And there's so many of them out there that are wanting to do that. And we built it around education, and we said, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. We don't want to just throw the keys to a driver and say, good luck. We want to make sure they have the educational background to be successful in running their own small business.
And talking about success, let's talk about what does the next 7 years look like for chief carriers, and what are some of the things that you're looking forward to help continue that success along the way?
Yeah, I think a couple, think about the fleet side of our business or the asset side of our business. We just have some great opportunities. We continue to grow as chief industry grows. Thankfully, we're their in-house carrier and stuff, so as they grow, that means we get to add trucks and drivers and trailers and stuff too. I know there's some plans in the near future here to maybe put up a new terminal and driver facilities in Indiana at our buildings plant, and hopefully in South Carolina, not too far down the road too. Then on the brokerage side of things, logistics is just wide open. The neat thing about logistics is you don't have to invest, you don't have capital investments. You don't have to go buy trucks, trailers, find drivers to that. As long as you've got a broker and a computer and some customers, you can move freight. You play that intermediary for that customer and you just handle their freight. So the advantage for Chief is that we are experts in moving steel. And as long as we follow that path, I think we have some great growth potential with our logistics group as well.
And you talk about that growth potential in new terminals. That puts us here in Grand Island,
Yep.
Rensselaer, Indiana,
Right.
and also Lancaster, South Carolina.
Yes.
So what does that do for your drivers as well, kind of regionalizing them?
Yeah, so that's been a big change over the last 5 years too, as Chief has continued to expand in how they distribute out of each one of those plants. It's allowed us to become more of a regional carrier out of each one of those. So we really operate within a 500 to 700 mile radius of each one of those plants. It allows us to get our drivers home more often.
And I'm sure they really appreciate
Yeah,
that.
it makes the job much more attractive.
Well, that's wonderful. Obviously, there's been lots of changes in the industry, some bumps, but lots of successes as well. And I know those successes are going to continue in the future. So thank you so much, Andrew, for being here with me today. And we really look forward to seeing what's next for Chief Carriers.
Very excited. Thank you.